So what we have here is a program that I've compiled in the C language. What we see here are bytes are defined as unsigned characters. So characters, 8 bits, no sign value, that's no plus or minus. So it's just positive integers, natural numbers. And so we have a byte pointer here, dynamically allocated, contiguous allocation, assign the numbers 1 through 5, and a static array, also assign the numbers 1 through 5. And so what I want to do is call them in foxtrot and foxtrot stat, two separate function calls. As you can see here, there's breakpoints set for them, and at the start of each function call. And I want to compare the address values of the arrays as they compare with the structured exception handler addresses. And so what we can do is we go through to the first breakpoint, check RSP, because what we have here is a quad word from RSP plus 30 hexadecimal stored in RCX. And so if we check RSP plus 30 hexadecimal, 8 bytes, what we get here is an address. And so this is actually going to be the address of the dynamically allocated array. And so we go through to the start of foxtrot and check RSP. And actually what we want to do is check RSP for 8 bytes. And that should give us the return address when the function returns. So actually we can do when return is called. And so what we see here is the way that the value from the stack is assigned. But actually if we go back here, and we disassemble this address for 2 instructions, you see the call here. So 3 instructions. This is the address that's on the stack, at the top of the stack, which we checked here at the start of the foxtrot. So what we can also do is check RCX now. And you see that this is the address. Of course, the address was stored on the stack in small endian order because that's volatile memory, and the Intel x86-64 processor stores it as such. But this value is now in RCX. And so, okay, let's go step through. And then actually what I want to do now is check the structured exception handler chain. So we can do that with xchain. And this actually gives us the address of the structured exception handler frames. And so what we can do is check protected memory of the stack. And so you can see that the base address of the stack is here at 7C556FF0000 or 000. And it lasts for 1,000 bytes. So what we can do is we can search this value, and what we should find is the address of the first frame if we search for that. So 1,000 bytes. And we should search for a quad word because it's a 64-bit address. And so what we see here is this is the address where the address of the structured exception handler's first frame is stored. And we can actually go back and compare the value that we stored in RCX, which is the address of the dynamically allocated array. And we compare that with the address of the structured exception handler. And so what we see is, so actually the dynamically allocated array is located, the address of the array is located at least 2,000 gigabytes above where the structured exception handler is. So we can't actually overflow into that. But actually, if we go through to the start of foxtrot stat, where after we defined the statically allocated array. We check RSP plus 27. So we can look at that. And, actually it's a load effective address. But we can check, yeah, so it's a range error. So it was actually the address of RSP plus 27H. So we go through to the start of foxtrot stat. We can load where this stack pointer is. And actually, let's just double check what's in RCX. So if we do DV, we won't actually see any address for Bravo yet. So we go through, step through, DV. We can see this is the address of the static array. So we compare that with RSP. So actually what we see here is that the static array is 47 bytes above where the stack pointer is. But actually what we can do now is check xchain, and it should be the same. This is, or at least the address of the structured exception handler should be the same. But we'll look at where that is on the stack. So we do vprod again for virtual protection. And we search the stack space for that address. Actually, there's an overflow because I stupidly didn't use quad. And so we get this address in the stack space for the structured exception handler. So what we can do now is compare that with the value of Bravo's address. And it's actually only 17 bytes difference. And so actually what you can see, if there is a statically defined array, you can actually overflow into the static exception handler and take control of the flow of the program that way.